Hello, everybody. It's RM here, and welcome to PGS Treks. Of course, we're here tonight with Julian. Julian, how are you doing?
I'm doing super RM. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And of course, the other night we had our live watch party of Picard Season 3, Episode 6, The Bounty.
Epic.
It was incredible, Julian. What a night we had. Certainly a lot of surprises in the show. We also had, of course, Robert joined us himself, which was great to have Robert here with us to further the discussion because there was so much to talk about. Julian, I don't think I've ever seen an episode that had this much in it, not even a movie. What do you think, Julian? Was this episode maybe an episode that you've seen just even in the entire series, let alone history of Star Trek that had so much in it that your mind is just blown?
Yeah, it was a good episode. I don't know about Mind Blown, but boy, they had lots of starship porn for us to Google our eyes at. All the old ships that they saw at the Fleet Museum. And bringing in Geordie LaForge, we're getting everyone together. We got, Raffi and Worf meeting up with them. And so it was fun to see how that was shaping up to get everybody together. We got a lot more reinforcement of the family theme that is running through this whole series, the importance of family. And so I got a chance to watch it again this morning and just really enjoyed it again.
Yeah, Julian, it seems like one of those episodes. I'm gonna have to just keep watching it over and over again. I keep seeing things in it that I'm enjoying and really loving. So much attention to detail. So much time was spent on very specific things that many of us are going to recognize. And I know when we were first watching it, of course it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So I admit that I didn't catch everything in the episode, nor should I at that time of night. But Julian, listening to it again and listening to the music cues even, where they'll have something like that, or once again, we have to look at those panels and not just at the end of the episode, but also during the episode, where they are giving us a lot of clues and kind of bringing us along for the ride to solve, this problem, which I think they really wanted it to be somewhat more interactive for the community. What do you think about the idea that it was important to kind of go forward in the production value and add those extra visual cues, those extra clues and things in the episodes in this in season 3?
Uh, I think I'm not exactly sure which ones you're talking about, but certainly we saw a lot of things happening in Daystrom when they got into Daystrom, and all the different things that apparently is involved with Section 31, which seems to have its fingers in everything again, protecting the Federation for everyone, and they have some very interesting things there. We saw another Genesis device. We saw supposedly the body of James T. Kirk pulled
Oh goodness.
from the wreckage of from the movie Generations,
Mhm.
and we saw killer tribbles.
Tribble.
Yeah, attack tribbles with multiple mouths. Very interesting. And we also found that there was something a show I was watching today. They did a close up. There was another one. It's a really quick. You don't see it very well, but it had something to do with the Borg and and how they use it to control the collective, to make everybody's mind kind of liable to just being one with the collective instead of individuality. Borg, it starts with a V, I think, but I can't remember exactly what it was they said. I saw it on the podcast. The guys on podcast and they had a still of it. Still couldn't really see what it said, but
Mhm.
I assume like a still and close viewing might help out. But that was interesting, and the fact that the big zowie was the fact that we find out that Picard's organic body was recovered after its death, and so it was the Daystrom Institute, and that is what was taken by the changelings. So that
Yeah,
brings up a lot of interesting things. There's supposedly still Borg nanites running through his organic
I'm sorry.
body, and
Mhm.
so that may have something to do with why they took it. Something about his Borg past. It might be something that they need for them to. I don't know. Maybe it ties in with the fact that we found out in this episode that all Starfleet ships are now kind of like little AI entities that communicate with each other. So kind of like a cloud system for starships. They're communicating, and that's how they've been able to track the Titan all over the place. So that was very
Yeah, this
interesting.
is it's incredibly interesting, Julian. You make so many good points about what we saw. It was a lot, and that's scratching the surface of what we saw. I don't know how they were able to fit so much into an episode without it feeling, weighted down, overwhelming. It didn't feel that way. This is one of those pivotal episodes in the series where it was just so miraculous with what we got, and it was just unbelievable what they put in here. I think the overall tone of the episode um is kind of, it did definitely drive the story forward, but it also gave us a lot of things kind of leading towards what we were naturally expecting to see. I think that we got this kind of idea of seeing Vatic still out there looking for the Titan, and of course the beacon was there. That's what she found. But the idea that now the people who are on her ship don't believe that she's doing the right things. And one of them had said, maybe we ought to do something different now. We're not finding what we're looking for. And her response is to eliminate the person. It seems pretty hardcore, Julian. She could have just said, hey, let's push them away from duty, but instead decided to kill. What kind of system do you think she has there where if somebody even suggests swaying away, they get killed, Julian? It seems pretty harsh.
Well, we know from earlier encounters with the changelings, specifically with DS9, that it was anathema for the changelings, the founders, to kill one another. In fact, Odo ran afoul of that when he ended up killing one of the changelings, and they imposed a sentence of solidity on him for a time. And of course, that was changed eventually, but that was what we originally thought. And now we have changelings, who seem to not really care about that. Um, we have, and we don't know if they have evolved. We don't know if that is something that happened to help create this separateness. But it seems, I mean, just the fact that we have a group of changelings that separated from the main group to say, we don't want to do what you're doing. We think that we need to continue prosecuting this war against the solids is fascinating. And so if you've got one break in the link, so to say, there, then what's to say that within that group there is not going to evolve some sort of power struggles, and the way to take care of it is to enact force. Their separation from the link has definitely driven them to certain extremes, and maybe they really realize that. Maybe what they're trying to do is get some way. Maybe their evolution has created a situation where they cannot link. Maybe they can't do that anymore. and maybe that in itself has kind of driven them mad. So that's a possibility that something that's going on here. It was interesting that it was kind of a flashback to Star Trek 3, A Search for Spock, where Krug kills one of his guys because he screwed up when they targeted the the ship and blew it up, and he's like, well, I wanted prisoners. He's like, oh, lucky shot. It's like, too bad. He kills him. It was almost kind of like that, And of course, we've seen Terry do an awful lot of those kind of callbacks throughout this show.
Absolutely, Julian. And, I think it's very interesting to see the dynamic just even in that ship. They didn't have to show us that, but they wanted us to know that the stakes are high and there's a lot of tension, and that, Vatic is very frustrated because she hasn't been able to fulfill this mission. And she absolutely wants to see bodies floating in space, a very grim kind of, not so nice looking future of people, kind of just floating around. I guess she also says that it's degrading to have to be in these human forms.
She also mentioned something about her crew, that a bunch of them are not very well formed. That seems to be something that's why they're disguised, I guess, is that they have trouble actually maintaining a certain form, perhaps. And that might be a result of the what has happened to them. All these clues are pointing to the fact that there's something has gone terribly wrong with this group of changelings. And like you said, with the things that the scenes are telling us, if the story is well written, every scene is supposed to be moving the story and the themes of the story forward and telling us something. If it's not telling us anything new, then it really shouldn't be in that story. That part shouldn't be in the story because it's not moving the story forward. And I think, for the most part, especially with the themes of what we're seeing of family, and there's so many multi-levels of what is family. In this episode, we get both family of our, once again, the ship, my crewmates. This is family. Starfleet is family. And then you have the bonds of actual family when Geordi comes aboard and is complaining to Picard. It's like, you're putting my daughter in danger, because the worst thing is to have to worry about your kid. And then that goes all the way back to Beverly's decision. I can't protect him from the people that come gunning for you. So again, and also we come back to the episode 17 seconds and Riker in the elevator and worrying now. He's like, I'm going to have to protect this new person with, what if I can't? All these new things. I felt this myself when I became a father the first time. I looked at my daughter and I felt this fear. I said, I'm always going to worry that something's going to happen. It's one of those things that you have to kind of surmount almost on a daily basis. Sometimes it seems like, but I love the fact that Terry is picking up on some of these things that are really important in Trek, and just from my own experiences as a guy who grew up, watching in the 70s and first watching it with my dad, and then introducing our daughter, his granddaughter, to Trek and taking her to conventions and dressing up and all that. It is generational. Trek, when it's at its best, is a generational thing. And I've seen this at the conventions too, where you have 3 or 4 generations of fans that all love enjoying Trek. And we're getting that through Terry's storytelling here and his writers that he's brought together to write this. we're getting a wonderful, wonderful remembrance of what good Trek is.
Excuse me. Absolutely, Julian. It really is quite fascinating and honestly just wonderful to watch what's happening in these episodes as they are, going on. Because truly, the amount of time and energy that was put into develop this was significant. This wasn't something that was done off the fly, and it was very specific to what we need to see as fans and what we would naturally expect to see as fans in an episode in 2023. Um, so I think it was very interesting to finally see Worf and Riker together again. These two chums, with the comments of, him saying that he's a pacifist. And honestly, I really did like that term because I almost felt as if when he was saying that, it was almost as if he was saying, as a Klingon, I'm going into another stage of my life. And is this kind of the first time we're seeing Klingons in a later stage of their life? Because Klingon culture and development is huge. I mean, I'm almost wondering how far they're going to take it because I want to see all the things that Worf can do. Now that he's going on to another stage as a Klingon and his older development, are we going to see more of that? Do you think?
No, I hope so. I hope so. It's really fascinating. It kind of, though, it, as much as everybody's like, oh, the Klingons and the warriors, and how tough, it is. I while it's new for us to see Worf going through this, and it's interesting, his what he's attempting for himself. He is attempting. He's striving for a certain centering of his, spirit, and to bring his spirit and body is into one, one centered being, and it is a fight. It's hard for him to do this, and that's as it should be. It's something that we're always striving to do. Just like, if you look at what Roddenberry was saying with Trek in the first place, it's like we are striving to be better. We are trying to make ourselves better people so that we don't have to be controlled by these things, these passions that we're dealing with here on this earth right now, the greed and war and incivility, all these things that we could try and make ourselves better. And here Worf is kind of a microcosm of how he's doing that, trying to bring his soul and his body together as one. And I think that's pretty cool. I think we've also kind of seen that a little bit in the past, especially like, again, Deep Space Nine, which had so many great episodes, but when they brought in Kang and Koloth, and it brought them together, and you could see these older Klingons, while still willing to just really get stuck in the action, they were at the near the end of their life, and they were being very philosophical, especially Kang, very philosophical about where they were with their life, trying to do things a little bit different. I think even maybe Martok, after his time being a prisoner of the the foundlings, the founders, was he was more than just your run-of-the-mill Klingon at the end of Deep Space Nine. It's one of the reasons that you find that the Klingons that were still of the older guard, like Gowron, couldn't evolve to be the Klingons that they needed. And we're seeing an evolution of Klingon spirit with Worf, I think.
Yeah, and I think it is important to see the different stages and to continue to see more of the culture because it has been so important in Star Trek. Going forward, we haven't seen as much of it recently, right, Julian? It's not the way that we would expect it to be anyway. But Christopher Mayes, hi Christopher, says we've seen old Klingons before. Kempek, Cord from Star Trek 5.
Yeah.
And that is important to note. And thanks so much for reminding us of that. And Medallion says Martok is pretty old, but not as old as Worf in the season. So I have to say that Michael Dorn looks incredible. Worf looks incredible. He doesn't really look older other than the white hair. if he changed that hair color, he might still look like he did almost 20 or 30 years ago. So it's kind of funny to see him, but I think they wanted us to see that he's developing and growing differently. And, there are different stages. And it's good to see that as well, because we talked about how we wanted to see how everybody has changed and how their lives have progressed and seen growth. And we are seeing that in Worf. And of course, we talked about him being able to do things that well, at least I hadn't really seen. But I think it's really important for us to continue to see characters do that. But it is so incredible when Worf talks about how, when he sees Rafi and Seven together, and he says, he kind of had to be deceptive. He knew not to say, yeah, it's a great idea if you come along. Like, eventually he had to say, look, it's not a good idea you guys come along. But it was interesting to hear him talk about how on his home world breakups usually end in bloodshed, which was just, I mean, it was so good, because it's true, and it rang so true, but it was funny. It's kind of cracking a joke, but not meaning to crack a joke. Is Worf? I think he knows he's funny. Is Worf a natural charmer? Even of his own culture, he can have a laugh, um, regardless of the situation here. What do you
Well,
think?
we know for certain, at least at one point in his life, Worf was not a merry man. So he's very earnest. But I think at this point in his life, yeah, he's perceptive. He's a very perceptive individual, and that's part of his. That's part of his learning. It's part of his evolution. I think he's realized good ways to interact without without saying things that are really going to mess up the situation. And we still don't know exactly what it was that happened between Seven and Raffi. And at first it was very strange, because when we found out early on that she was undercover and doing her stuff for Starfleet, and you could almost think that maybe that spiel that she said about how my girlfriend left me was part of her cover, right? I couldn't tell at first. I thought, and once it was totally established that she was undercover and playing a role to get information, I was like, oh, well, maybe she was just using that as part of her spiel, pretending she was kind of strung out and all that kind of stuff. So to find out that it really did happen, that something happened between them, has me wondering if, are they going to touch on that more? Are we going to find out why? But we may not, because it might not be important to the story, to get the story forward. We may want to know, but we may never find out. But what we did have, what we had was a really good scene on the bridge between Jack and Seven as they were looking at the ships that are at the museum. We find out that Jack is a starship junkie. He loves the starships, and they were going through them, and he was discussing them. And I teared up, man. We got to that part where she hovered her finger over the Voyager and decided to show it, because I think she had to make a choice to talk about it, and it was really touching.
It was incredibly touching. Just like all of you, I watched every single episode of Voyager, and I watched, as I said before, I watched Seven grow up on that ship and see what a profound it was, like a home to her. And I think that Janeway was, maybe one of the kindest people she'd ever met. She welcomed Seven with open arms. It was really a very tight family. They were out in the Delta Quadrant, where no one could hear them. It was almost as if they had disappeared, and their experiences, I felt, were very unique. But Seven kind of, learned how to be a human on that ship. And I always wondered what she thought of Voyager. All this time I wondered how she felt about it. This is the first season that I feel like we're seeing, the real side of Seven that we haven't seen before. She's a person and she has emotions and feelings just like the rest of us. but it did take time for her to kind of develop that, because she was somewhat more rigid and she couldn't understand. She had to process a lot of these emotions that she felt, not just on Voyager, but even the ones here, where when she first encounters Riker and Picard, and she intimates to them, this isn't what I thought. I have to do whatever they say. And, I think it was very interesting how she had grown and she felt she could confide in them. And she's continuing to confide in the rest of the crew. We're seeing a lot of that. And she wants to be part of their lives. And that begs the question, Julian, is she going to find another home like Voyager?
Well, what you said earlier about the first two seasons of Picard, when Seven comes to us in that first season, she's reacting. Her character is reacting. She is not that she's making choices based on the fact that she has to react to the fact that there's this group out there that's killing, Borg and citizens who had been taking their implants to sell in the black market. So we don't get a chance. Everything she's doing is in aid of trying to stop that. So that and then they get thrown into this thing in the second season, going into the past, and they have to get out. So she's having to deal with that. Here in season 3, Seven has made a choice to get herself in. They've accepted her into Starfleet. That's her choice. She made the choice. She didn't have to do that if she didn't want to, but she made the choice. I want to be in Starfleet, and here she is. And now she's, number one. She's the second in command on this starship. And yes, I think she is finding family. She is, like I said, if Shaw brought her on board to be kind of a link for him to try and figure out, get over his issues with the Borg, but also because he realizes some of the weaknesses of him, that his issues in communicating with the crew. He kind of, while he's kind of casual sometimes, he's not the guy who's going to be closer to the crew like the executive officer is. And I think she has made that. She when we first saw her, she felt, other than the fact that she's having her issues with Shaw, I thought she was comfortable on board that ship. She certainly seemed comfortable in the center seat, taking that ship out of space dock. And I think that's what's great about this. She's where she wants to be, and that is seeing that that's her choice, and she's acting on that and doing what she wanted to be. I think, yes, she's going to find that family, just like Picard found family, through Starfleet and through his crew, that he spent all those years with.
Yeah, it does feel good, doesn't it? To know,
Yeah.
and it is very comforting to have that feeling and that sense of belonging, because of course she was separated from her natural family, and then although she was with Voyager, Voyager's, I guess they decommissioned Voyager, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but and yes, Thomas, excuse me, this is exactly what we were talking about.
Yes, it was beautiful.
Beautiful. It really was. I'm sorry, Julian. And I think another my throat is so dry today. I think another interesting thing about this is, let's be honest here. These guys who signed up to Starfleet. So I think when she was asking about, whether she made a mistake to be on there, I don't think that's what she was asking. I think what she was really thinking is, am I going to find another home like I had on Voyager? And perhaps where she is, you said she's comfortable, Julian, you're right. Maybe after this season, she'll be more comfortable and start to feel like it's a family again. And I think, sometimes ships and crew need experiences to become closer and
That's
to
exactly
understand
it.
and make those connections. I certainly feel differently about Shaw. I'd serve with him any day if I could. But I also wanted to mention the other element, which I'm sure you guys already know. And yes, Medallion, once they name drop twice, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, about name dropping something twice, okay? name dropping something twice. So they name dropped Janeway twice, which indicates to me we might see her again. They name dropped, I think they name dropped Captain Kirk twice. I think they did because we saw his remains on the Daystrom, and I think they said his name. So I'm wondering, okay, they do things in threes. I don't think it's going to be two. But the other element, at least that's what I'm hoping for, Julian. The other thing that I couldn't stop thinking about, now I'm going to forget what I was saying, is oh, yes, they signed up for this and they love being in space. And we need to see that from time to time. The pride and the excitement that the crew themselves have, and awe and wonder of being out there in space. Julian, when they rode up on Athenian Prime, my first thought was like, I want to go. I want to go there. Like I want to go and visit the museum. But
Oh
Julian,
yeah.
as far as concerned, it is a museum, and they were like, it's dry dock. But since we know it's like they're connected, it's like a neural net. Everything's integrated, not just them, but every ship. They're not truly decommissioned, Julian, are they?
Well, the older starships, I doubt that they upgraded their communication system to be what the newer ships are. So I think I have no idea what they did to the computer systems on board those ships when they decommissioned them. So I don't know, but it seems to me that our story is leading towards a point where they are going to take one of the ships from there in order to be able to travel with, and not be, clocked by the rest of the Federation starships so easily. And so I think that's where we're leading. And there's been hints, and somebody said that the Enterprise F was in the trailers that we saw. So I would assume that may be it, what we're going to see, and that may be what daughter number 2 was talking about. Whatever was in Dry Dock 12.
Well, let's talk about the daughters, because they're not just beautiful young women, they're incredibly talented family. And to be honest with you, Julian, these girls know their stuff. Do they know a little bit more about the situation? You remember we heard the daughter tell them about the integration. Do they know a little bit more than what they're letting on? Do they know as much as their dad knows about the situation that seems to be happening in Starfleet, do you think?
Well, I can't remember what the other. I know there's Sydney is on board Titan. I can't remember the name of the other daughter, which is played by LeVar Burton's actual daughter. But and they're
It's
doing a
Sydney and
wonderful job.
Alondra. Sydney and Alondra.
Something like that. Yeah. I think she knows pretty much as Geordi does, as her father. I think she's been aware of whatever information he's getting. She's probably seen also, and even if he thinks she hasn't, she probably has, because I get that feeling that they are not girls to sit back and let things happen. They are, because they are who their father, daughters of who their father is. They are not that way. They're not going to sit and let things happen. They're active. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more from them. I think we're going to see it being pivotal to whatever it is that they decide to do. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I am too. And, of course, I think Medallion might have honed into what I was referring to. I kind of wondered how much they're going to rely on. And of course, we did discuss this, Julian, how much they're going to be relying on older technology, because perhaps that's technology is the least corruptible. There may not be a lot of people around still serving who know how to handle it. And even so, there may not be a lot of it around anyway. This might be the location where it's all at. In fact, these two locations, Athenian Prime and Daystrom, might be the two places that are best for them to kind of pick up things that they can use to fight back, which no one is expecting. for them to fight back with. So I think it is very interesting when Jordy finally comes on board. He, makes a comment. Of course, he's happy to see everyone, but he makes a comment where he says, "Leave it to you, Jean-Luc, to turn fatherhood into an intergalactic incident." But a lot of what they're dealing with, because it's such high stakes and because it's so advanced, and roaming the galaxy, you're going to kind of trip on into things like this. I think it was very interesting that Ethan Prime is located where it is. Someone says, is it close to Daystrom? It is very interesting that these two particular that Jean-Luc suddenly thought that he had to go to Ethan Prime. I don't think he just went there, and he was very clear. It is true that he, his son and the girls kind of lifted a cloaking device, but he was very specific that he needed Geordi's help. And I really
Yeah.
like the element of it, Julian. What do you think about Jean-Luc saying, "I know where I can go. Geordi might be able to find a solution to this"?
Well, based on what it was that he was proposing to Geordi, it's another one of those signs that he has been out of the service for a while, because he had no real knowledge of the fact that the ships were interlinked like they were, and that doing what he had hoped Geordi would do for them would serve no purpose. It wouldn't help them the way he thought it would, and it's kind of interesting. We had that issue with when they were leaving space dock and going to warp, and there were different protocols in place because of the way that the ships were built and the way they handled, and he had no idea that was a thing either. And so I'm interested in seeing if, again, something that he was not aware of is going to be one of those things that he ends up being able to use and put together as some sort of strategy. Once he gets appraised of the situation, he's taken those pieces of data in, and he is going to probably, with the help of all of his supporting family, come up with the plan that is going to see them through this. So
Now, I know I'm kind of curious when Rafi and Riker and Worf end up on Daystrom. There's a security alert, and he uses the key, and it shuts off the alert, and it says, "Well, welcome to the station." And it says something like, "Remember, no eat food or drink, no eating in the station." And I wanted to know, where does the assumption of eating in the research lab or area come from, and how did it end up here at the Daystrom station in Picard season 3? Because for those of us who have worked in labs, including myself, there is this assumption that eating does take place in the lab. I just think it's really funny, kind of maybe even a nod to modern day lab people. What do you think, Julian?
Again, it's one of those things where we're in the 25th century, but we're also trying to tell a story to people in the 21st century. And so you throw things in there that can be can be felt, emotionally understood. It's like, oh, I've heard something like that, or I've read things, a sign saying that on a door, or I've seen somebody who was eating in a area where it's like, it's just something that you can chuckle at, and because it's kind of that saying, people will be people, and even though we're striving through the centuries to be better humans, we're still humans. After all, we are still sentient beings who still behave in certain ways, certain patterns, that so that these type of things still kind of can be remarked upon.
Well, I immediately, when I heard that, I immediately said, it's got to be somebody who worked in a lab who said that, because it is a common discussion, and it unfortunately does happen. But I never did it. But as everyone would reply, I've never done that. So that's how I'm
Yeah, oh,
leaving
not
it.
me.
Yeah. But I think it was very interesting, and I'm gonna look a little bit closer in some cases in some of the past episodes and see if I can find instances where we do see some modern cultural references blended into the episodes where perhaps I didn't notice it. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, um, you know, Beverly talks about the visions that Jack has. And guys, I know I'm going out of order here, and you've actually mentioned it a few times. We've talked about it, and she asked Jean-Luc to talk to him about it. Is Jack going to decide to opt to have a positronic body like his father so he can avoid all of those issues that is associated with his condition, which Jean-Luc had, and I never even knew he had? Suffered from, I mean, like he suffered from it.
Uh, um, we first get introduced to this Irumodic syndrome and all good things at the end of Next Generation. In this story, when it's set in the future, and they've diagnosed him with this syndrome, and of course that's part of the plot of the thing, is that Q is popping him through time, and he's trying to tell everybody about it, and they think it's because of this Irumodic syndrome, because apparently that's part of the hallucinations is part of this, the symptoms. And it makes me wonder if, I mean, of course, we get into Picard and season 1, and they use this as a reason for his body, dying, so that they can get him into the positronic body, the golem. We know where lots of people stand on that. Be that as it may, they did. I find myself wondering if what they took as Irumodic syndrome has something to do with something else going on in Picard and now Jack, and that we know, because of the way the story is telling us, exactly as Medallion says, that the visions are not the Irumodic syndrome. Yeah. So, yeah, there. Thank you for that, Medallion. But because of the process of the story, we know that that's not what's really happening. So, what is happening to Jack may be masquerading as these tags for what would be taken as Irumodic syndrome, and perhaps that's what was going on with Picard. And all they could do is say, "Oh, this may be." We don't even know when they first started seeing this disease, or they couldn't even tell us what was causing it. And of course, Picard was exposed to lots of stuff through the 7 years we saw, right? Who knows, between having Borg nanites and all the other different types of radiations that were they were subjected to throughout, in time travel and all this kind of stuff. Who knows what those events could have done and created something kind of like, and perhaps the Starfleet medical is like, I don't know what's going on, but we're seeing these things happening to people, at certain points in their life, and these are the markers for it, and so we'll just call it this thing, and it doesn't seem to be good. It's not a good diagnosis for you. So maybe because Jack is Picard's son, he's going to have some of those same markers, because Jack is Picard's son and was conceived after he was, had Borg nanites put in him, that's like, there's something in there, in his genetic makeup that is involved with that. Now, I hope that we don't see like the Borg come in at the end and like Deus Machina save we're here to save you, Like,
Yeah, that would
I
be
hope
horrible.
not. But yeah, I think Terry's a better storyteller than that, but so far from what we've seen, but and what we've heard from people
Well,
who
also
know.
seeing Julian, the children kind of take matters into their own hands sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've seen that a lot before, have we?
Certainly not in Picard. And
I mean,
in Next Generation, Wesley was often taking things into his own hands.
that is very true. So it's been a while since we've seen, someone who maybe was in more of a position of power like Wesley, who was quite an exception compared to the other officers, the other younger officers on the bridge. There, where they decided, he immediately thought about the cloaking because of what Seven of Nine had told him, which was a clue there. But and that was so cool that it was hidden, and they didn't know it was there. But it does pay homage to the original story because it was cloaked when they went to Earth anyway, right, Julian? And they had all these great scenes where people would be driving by or flying by, and they'd knock into it, not knowing that the bird of prey was in the way because it was cloaked. You just couldn't see it. But I just like that thought of them also not being able to find it. Was just, it's just really funny play on that. And of course we know it's just really very, very clever that we saw that. But I'm kind of curious, now that we see, let's say, Data is back, or a version of Data 2, 3.0, 4.0, whatever this version of Data is. Everybody's so amazed that Data is back, and Data was used to kind of protect the Daystrom. But now that they've removed Data from Daystrom, is Daystrom vulnerable now to another robbery of what's left on there?
Well, with Starfleet swarming around there, right now I doubt it, and they're probably not going to touch too much on that. I think, you touched on zipping in and getting what they need for the mission. Well, yeah, they've just pulled a simulacrum. What he seems to be a cross between an android or a positronic being, but also not. Maybe organic, maybe closer to like a replicant type of thing. I don't know. But he was the mainframe. He had everything in there. Whatever was in Daystrom is in him. And you talk about family. He in one being is this whole collection of Sung family, from actual organic Sungs to positronic Sung, Lore and Lol and B4 and, all of them crammed into this body. And I'm sure somehow they are going to be able to be instrumental in figuring out what it is that they need to do to defeat the changeling plan.
Yes, and this changeling plan, I think Data probably has more to say about it, because Data was there when the robbery took place. And although he's told them what was taken, we didn't get a chance to ask Data more questions. I think once Data starts to explain, and perhaps this might be a situation where Data could possibly explain what's happening, but the explanation may not make any sense. So I think it would be very interesting if, it was kind of a play on words. He was speaking to Jean-Luc. He says, "What did they take?" Jean-Luc. I think it would be interesting if they asked him what else was taken, or did you hear anything when they came on board? Because it wouldn't occur to them that Data might be recording what they're saying when they're on the ship, on Daystrom when they're retrieving. Did you get it? Did you get all those items? Good. Now we can proceed, or whatever it is. I think it would be very interesting if Data already knows what is in store and what's happening, because maybe Daystrom, maybe part of it, I don't know, could be also integrated. So I don't know if it is, but I think it is. It would seem to make sense that it would have to be integrated, in that just Starfleet would want to know if anybody's coming and going onto Daystrom. So if anybody goes in, an alert would sound, and eventually they figure out, oh, someone has now gone ahead and infiltrated unauthorized. Even though they have a key, it's still unauthorized. Correct, Julian?
Uh, Yeah, I suspect so.
So I'm guessing that they will find out they'd been there, but I really kind of wonder what else we're going to learn from Data. Julian, what is going to happen in this next episode? Because we do need to see a little bit more information now that Data is there, and everybody has missed him terribly. He himself now. Well, they didn't get a chance to hug him, Captain JT Kirk. They didn't get a chance to hug him. You know, he's still connected to everything. It's just still imagine you haven't seen a friend for 20 years and now all of a sudden you're
Hey,
seeing them again, right, Julian?
he's sitting in a chair with wires coming out of the back of his head.
You know, all
I,
those years of, you know, his positronic matrix overloading
you
and,
know, I
you know, the emotion
after
chip.
after
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm thinking that certainly, you know, the teaser is after the teaser. That first act is probably going to be revolving around them trying to, you know, get more information out of Data. They're probably definitely going to be trying to figure out what it is. You know, they're going to be, you know, just racking their brains trying to figure out why it is that they stole, you know, the cadaver of Jean-Luc Picard. And what could it be? Why for? But we're also going to be spending some time on board the strike because we're going to have to resolve, you know, what's going on with Riker and Deanna because they're caught on there, and we have to determine whether, you know, is this a trick? Did they actually grab the actual Deanna? If they did, what has happened to their daughter Kestrel? Where is she? And so
Yeah, this is a good question, and it's not resolved. I do just want to answer tonight. I don't believe there's going to be a musings. Robert, is it at a con? I think it's WonderCon, and he's speaking on Chris Gore's panel or a few panels.
yes,
So
yes.
I don't know what his schedule is like. I don't know if we're doing musings this weekend. He did tell me. I can't remember. I'm sorry. He did tell me that he would not be available for part of this weekend. So he had to change a lot of his schedule around. You'll notice that Let's Get Physical Media is tomorrow, right, Tom? I know Tom can hear me. So I did just want to address that, guys. This schedule this week and the next few weeks we're going to have very different schedules between WonderCon and Star Wars Celebration and a few other things that are happening. So things will be a little different. Not this show. I'm still going to do the show on time, but I might have to change the things
Chimera
around.
Gaming.
Yeah, you know
I've
something.
been hearing that rumor too. I've been hearing that
And
rumor. I saw something on YouTube, and he was saying, "I'm hearing." Like, let's just not go there until we get told what's actually happening. I don't want to
we
rock the boat.
we don't know for sure. Yeah, we don't know for sure. However, we do know that the cast and crew would like a continuation of the series, and people are enjoying it, and that's always a good sign. Um, and hi Jay, guys, I'm putting your comments up on here just briefly because there was no way I could read everybody's comments and listen to Julian and ask him questions in the hour that we have to do the show. But I did just want to say, Julian, is there anything else you want to mention about this episode before we wrap up our spoiler review of Picard season 3, episode 6?
I think I managed to you know, chomp on the bits that really struck me, and I am kind of like chomping at the bit for next week's show. I really am looking forward to it,
Yeah, I
and
think that we got.
I can't
Oh,
wait.
I'm sorry, Julian. Go ahead. Excuse me. Go ahead.
That's it.
Okay. I was gonna say, I think we got something really special in this episode. And like I said, I think for the season, this is one of the major turning points where perhaps we know most of the players now. And at this point, we're going to see a lot of execution going forward because we now have Data, who's a major player. You pretty much have the extremely intelligent crew that we had before, plus even more brilliant minds working on this problem. And it is a complicated problem. And we're going to find the solution as to why the Dominion has infiltrated Starfleet, the entire Federation. We're going to find out a lot of things. And it's going to be maybe one of the most difficult, uh, one of the most difficult problems they have to solve. And we needed to see this level of complexity, right, Julian?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly how many hours they said. They had like what, 48 hours or so, something like roughly, before Fleet,
What is it called? Frontier
or
Day?
before the Frontier Day, whatever it's called. I
Yes.
think something like that. Yeah, I can't remember. Um, yeah. So Frontier Week, I think, actually is the. But I think because they have that time frame, and I think we have 4 episodes left. So I think we're gonna get those, those hours in between are going to be taking place between episode 7 and 8, right? So time's going to be kind of like compressed, so that those 2 episodes account, and by the end of episode 8, they're going to be embarking on exactly what it is that they need to do to stop this thing at the last minute. And then episodes 9 and 10 are going to be everything as they go in. So it's even going to compress. It's all going to be happening in a not so in a closer time frame, right? So there's going to be lots of stuff going on. Our exciting. They're going to, our members are going to be in dire peril by the end of episode 9, I'm sure, and we're going to be worried about some of them and what's
They've
going to
got to get
happen.
Riker back,
And
right, Julian? They've got
yeah,
to get
yeah,
Riker back
we got to get Deanna
and
back,
Deanna.
and all the yeah.
Yeah, I think it is very interesting. And I think, yeah, someone says, I have a feeling that Worf is going to go on a rescue mission. He's so extraordinary in doing actions like that. We know that even Rocky might come along. He's been training her, right? To be kind of this sidekick. So, maybe she can progress and also grow as a character. Yeah, I think after this point, after 6 episodes that were just extraordinary, I just think that this is just an amazing time right now to be a fan and just kind of enjoy these moments, because we were lucky to get this season, let's say the final season of the Next Generation, but maybe it's not, Julian. Maybe the momentum of this season will carry forward into even more Trek, and people are talking about it. People are always saying that, hey, I think that this story, there's more to the story. We know it can be more complex, Julian. Certainly want to see, I certainly want to see the kids also have a show, let's say, or be featured. I don't want their for this to be just that season, and then we don't see the young LaForges and maybe Jack, and even who knows who else who's out there in the crew. Julian, the crew on the bridge are fascinating. Those guys are great. We don't know a lot about them, everybody yet, but they're great, Julian, right?
Yeah, they're competent officers doing their job, and we love to see that. We love
Yeah.
to see that.
I love to see it too. I think, this has certainly been such a wonderful experience, Julian, and it's such a pleasure having you here to talk more and more about Trek. Guys, Julian and I are going to continue to talk about Trek for the rest of the year. So don't worry, even after the season ends, we're going to keep talking Trek. So don't worry, we're going to keep talking about different points and different things we love, books, whatever, as this year goes on. This is a series, we're not stopping it. Perhaps we won't do it at 11 o'clock. But whatever time Julie and I decide, PGS Treks will continue here on the Burnettwork. Don't worry, guys. It's not over. We are going to continue this series. We love seeing all your comments, and we are going to continue even after Picard season 3 is over. You know, as far as we're concerned, you know, we're lifelong Trekkies, so it never stops for us, just like for you guys. So, guys, thank you, everybody. Tom, Junior, Jackson, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
are
Tom.
such a great friend. We are all goof people, Tom. It's been such a pleasure seeing all your comments, guys. And please do come back. I love to see your comments. We respect you, even if you don't care for the show. We're just glad that you are here. And for all of you out there, guys, and Julian, such a pleasure again. And I guess I'll see you at the next watch party, Julian. For everybody out there, absolutely live long and prosper, everybody. And remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.